Good evening. Good evening. I'm Rarchar Tortorello. Oklahoma's education is at a crossroads. We have massive teacher shortages, declining academic outcomes, and a culture war raging in our classrooms. Who's going to step in to fix the system? Are we going to keep throwing money at the problem, or are we going to return to a constitutional conservative principle in our schools?
Good evening. I'm Sharla Hildner.
And I'm Rarchar Tortorello. Welcome to the Comanche County GOP Podcast. Tonight, we are honored to be joined by a man who says he's not a career politician, but a classroom teacher who knows exactly what works. And my longtime friend, he's a constitutional conservative running to become the next Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction, James Taylor. Welcome to the show. Dr. James Taylor, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Good to see you both.
Dr. Taylor, let us start with your background. You are the senior pastor at First Christian Church of Norman. You also teach history and government, and you have witnessed firsthand how knowledge breaks the chains of poverty for your students. Tell us about your journey from the pulpit to the classroom.
Well, to me, it's not really much of a journey because teaching is teaching. Whether I'm teaching in the pulpit or whether I'm teaching in the classroom, it's all the same. Teaching is teaching. And so when I was in a position, when I was in Arizona, I went into teaching into the classroom. I became bivocational, and I'm still bivocational, teaching and preaching. And I love both. I mean, honestly, the fact that they pay me to do this is an extra bonus to me because I love teaching. I love being involved with kids, having an impact in their lives. And I try to do that to make a difference in their lives. And so my journey has really been, I've been in the classroom about 18 years, but I've been in the pulpit since 77. My first internship was in the summer of 77. So I've been doing this for a long time. And of course, when I say that number 77 out loud, that sounds like a long time, but it's experience. That's what it is. It's experience.
Right.
You know what? I've known you for a long time. You're a stand-up guy, and you're not afraid to stand up for your convictions. A few years ago, I want to say a few years ago, but it was back in 2018, I believe it was, where you were actually terminated from teaching for refusing to comply with the unconstitutional mask mandate. Do you remember that?
Oh,
And
I sure do.
it was a big deal here in Norman. And because of that, you produced a video or DVD exposing the lies of critical race theory being taught in our education system. I want to go back and just briefly bring the viewers who don't know about your background. Let's just start by, why were you terminated from your job for not wearing a mask? Or why did you say it was unconstitutional?
Well, it was unconstitutional because the law was that no school could require people to wear masks unless the governor had declared a state of emergency. That was the law. And my background, I've also got a background where my first book I ever wrote was AIDS, There Will Never Be a Cure. And in that, it deals with the whole issue of that, why there's not going to be a cure and whatnot. And so I'd researched the issue of masks and things already. So I knew that what these paper masks that they were giving us, they weren't designed for what they were saying to do. And in fact, here's the reality. What we were told about COVID now, we now know that pretty much everything they told us was a lie. And so
Absolutely.
all that stuff was just not true. And so I knew that what they were saying wasn't right. And so because I was obeying the law, we were not just asked, we were commanded to disobey the law at that time. And so I believe that law and order is important, and I wasn't about to break the law just to accommodate someone's idea. And so because of that, they terminated us that first day. They called us in and we met in there. Now, what's interesting about that, they still haven't dealt with the issue. They're hoping that we'll just forget about it. And we're not.
Mhm.
We are all ready to go to court on this. And here's what they did just recently. Well, I guess about 2 years ago, maybe. There were 6 of us that refused to wear the mask. And 3 of them left education altogether and went into other jobs. Now, 2 of them have come back. Well, our state law still to this day says that you can transfer up to 60 sick days to your new district within the state. Outside the state, you lose them. But within the state, you can do that. Well, I went to go try to get mine, and I kept running to a roadblock. And there was one of the other teachers that asked for his. They gave him his right away. He's a white teacher. My friend, he's a white teacher, and I kept pestering them. And finally, I get an email that says the board met, and they have decided to neither compensate you nor transfer your sick days. I said, thank you very much. And I passed that on to my lawyer. I mean, so this is where they're at. The rule of laws don't mean anything to them. And so we were terminated. But I wasn't concerned about that because I knew, well, I think when we interviewed with you, I said, the Lord is my provider. He's my provider. And all Oklahoma City Public Schools was doing was just writing a check. That's all they did. So we're still dealing with that situation, and we're going to see it to the end.
So let's go back. I want to go backtrack because I have in my notes that you produced a DVD exposing the lies of critical race theory. Was that before you were fired or after? And also, question number 2, how have those battles prepared you to fight for Oklahoma parents and students?
Yeah. Well, this is the DVD. It's simply called Critical Race Theory versus the Bible, and this was. Well, I'd been talking about it before I got fired, and the DVD was produced before I got fired. Yes, and so I've been talking about that subject and talking about critical race. Critical race theory was the dumbest thing in the world. Literally, it was. I couldn't believe that white people were apologizing for being white. That was the dumbest thing that I'd ever seen. And so I'm watching. I'm thinking, how are they doing this? And what they were really saying is, God, you blew it, and therefore I got to apologize for how you messed up my life. That's really what they were saying. But I can tell you this, the God that I serve, he does not blow anything. And so critical race, this DVD, I was the one that was speaking on this actually across the nation for that matter. I was going speaking on it. And we had a situation where they passed House Bill 1775. Now, it didn't specifically say critical race theory, but what it dealt with was that critical race theory was not to be taught. Well, there was a group of parents and administrators and superintendents that didn't like that, and they sued our state. Now, that's, to me, is crazy. Why would you sue to promote racism? I mean, that's really what it was. And so they sued. Well, I get a phone call from the AG's office, and I get a phone call, and they say, hey, I hear that you are the tip of the spear on critical race theory. And I said, well, I don't know about all that, but I do speak about it. And they said, well, we're being sued and we'd like to use your materials in our lawsuit. And so by the grace of God, they used my materials and went to, because I quote the references, and they went to the direct sources and got the information that they needed. So I've already had a profound impact upon our state, our whole state right now, just with that alone.
Mm.
Isn't it interesting to see how God uses us when we're not expecting to be walking that path? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I saw something that was wrong, and I said, that needs to be fixed. I mean, that's what it was. It wasn't trying to get a name out or anything. It was like, hey, this is not right. This is crazy. So.
Well, when we look at your campaign, you make some bold promises. You state that every decision you make will be based on the 3C principles. Walk us through what Constitution, conscience, and constituents mean to you as a leader.
Well, to me, whenever you make a decision, and especially when the decision is in a position of leadership with our state or whatnot, the first thing priority is a constitutional. And that's important because we have enough non-constitutional junk going on already. We don't need to add to that. And so if we follow the Constitution, we will be better off. When it comes to the next thing is my conscience. Now, it's really interesting because I say the Constitution, my conscience, and then the constituents. But people say, no, constituents should go above your conscience. And I say, no, that's what the problem is. It's because people don't have standards. They don't have morality, values that they're going to stand by. So if the constituents say, hey, I want to do this, if the constituents say, hey, we want to murder babies, they got the wrong man for that job. I mean, so your conscience has to be in there near the top. Otherwise, you're going to keep running into problems. And then the constituents are all the people that you're dealing with. Now, I have no intentions of trying to please everybody, because I still want to enjoy life. Because the people who try to please everyone, one, they don't please everyone, and it affects them mentally and emotionally, and that's ridiculous. So I'm going to do my best to please. First of all, I'm going to please God. If I don't please God, then it won't make any difference about the people. It's got to be Him first. And so, and that, again, like I say, I am a pastor as well, and that's a priority, is to please Him first in all things, in all these things that take place, so that there's not any. There's no shady stuff going on. There's no stuff like, hey, what that seems kind of sneaky, or that's just not my style. Just not my style.
Amen.
You know what? I think we all live our lives that way after COVID and in the last couple of years. But the best thing that you ever wrote, I still have a copy in my library upstairs. It's biblical, not political, which guides Christians on how to vote conservatively. The left, we're under constant attack by the left, right? Conservative
Yes.
leaders for our faith, and especially when we bring that faith into public office. So how do you respond to those attacks, and why is faith so critical in your leadership or to your leadership?
The priority to me is faith in God. I'll say this: if I had to choose between the church, giving up the church, or giving up the superintendent's toast, because this is my priority. And reality is, our country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. Despite the fact that they are taking out all these references to God, we got all these revisionist historians coming onto the scene. And for me, here's how I deal with stuff. Here's how I deal with that. I purchase a constitution for all of my kids, and I give that to them. And so it has the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. That is their textbook. That's what they get to use as their textbook. Then we use original documents. Now and I have several of those things in my room. In fact, many of the things I pass around in the class so the kids can actually see what these things were like. And they're replicas of these, obviously. And so the kids can actually see what some of these things look like, and they can see that. So when we're dealing with what John Adams says, that it is our Constitution was made for a moral and religious person, it is totally inadequate for any other. Well, when he says religion, he doesn't mean the way we use religion. He meant Christianity. He says our Constitution was made for a Christian nation and moral people. Well, when we talk about that with the kids get to see that, and they get to read about that. And of course, we expand on that, and I talk to them so that it makes sense to them. Like, for example, I'll say, let's take both of those issues. Let's take morality. Well, what's in the news right now? The Epstein files. That's in the news. You talk about a moral vacuum. And then the other thing that the kids can really relate to is the Diddy parties. Okay, they know about the Diddy parties, and so they can see that that's a moral bankruptcy with those type of things. So morality is having a problem. And then we talk about Christianity, and I tell them, I say, Christianity has been in a decline in all denominations except for when Charlie Kirk was murdered. Once Kirk got murdered, there has been a revival globally that people are coming in and making decisions for Christ like crazy. I mean, I'm seeing by the thousands that they're making in different events. And so we talk about those things. When we talk about, let's say, the Declaration of Independence. We just did that not too long ago, about a couple of weeks ago. And what I do is I have them take the original version of the Declaration of Independence and what we currently have. And so they pull out their Constitution, and they're looking at these two things comparison. Here's what's interesting. Most people believe that our founding fathers wanted slavery in our country. That's an absolute lie. That's not the case, because when Jefferson wrote this Declaration of Independence, there's a 3-paragraph section that scoliates King George III for having slavery, and that's not what people know. People just believe the lies that they're being told. And so when you use the original documents, you're getting to the faith that our founding fathers had so that they can actually see it for themselves. And that's really what it's all about, is getting to that faith and letting them see for themselves. What did they say? How did this happen? Here's one that's really interesting. This is really amazing. And this was Ruggles versus People in the Supreme Court in 1811. This is a really interesting case. The Supreme Court, the Bible talks about blasphemy, but it never really defines what blasphemy is. But people don't know that the Supreme Court defined what blasphemy was in this Ruggles versus People in 1811. What had happened was there was a man who made comments about the Dalai Lama, about Muhammad, and about Jesus Christ. The Supreme Court said what he said about the Dalai Lama and Muhammad didn't matter because they were imposters. Not my words, Supreme Court's words. They were imposters. But what he said about Jesus was printed. He said, and I'm quoting, he said, Jesus Christ is a bastard and his mother must be a whore, end quote. Well, the Supreme Court considered that blasphemy. And he was fined $500 and sentenced to 6 months in jail. And that was a big deal back then. And so when you start looking at that, the Supreme Court defining what blasphemy is, that was in 1811, after our Constitution was in existence. And so, when you start looking at history and looking at how they started doing these things, you get a different picture when you start looking at original documents. So that's how I incorporate that now, by just going in and doing the very simple things like that. We went Valley Forge. When they were at the Valley Forge, instead of saying, hey, Valley Forge was a rough winter, the kids are reading the letters from George Washington and the letters from privates and soldiers who are there that are talking about their faith, that are talking about how God sustained them through this time. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. So that the kids are learning from this perspective.
Let me ask a follow-up question. But hang on a second, Sharla. Let me ask a follow-up question. So you're teaching this in your classroom, and you're having these conversations daily with your students, right? So do you find them more particular during the course of the school, okay, or the course of the week or the course of the month, when they come back on a Monday or a Tuesday and say, we watch this on TV? Because a lot of people, our faith, are being attacked by the left, by the media, by entertainment. So has this kind of shaped their worldview and put a shield around their thinking and thought process so they can go out and have these conversations, if they can. And when they come back the next week on a Monday or Tuesday, are they stronger for it? Are you finding that they are so resilient because they're walking with God, they're having conversations that pertain around the Constitution of what you're teaching? Does this make better and stronger students in your view?
Oh, I think it most definitely does, because the things that they have been taught are contrary to what is actual reality. And
Absolutely.
So when they start seeing this, in fact, what's interesting is the Ruggles versus Peoples case. What they said is whatever attacks Christianity goes to the heart of our civilization. In other words, what they said is, when you attack Christianity, you're attacking the foundation of the United States of America. That's the Supreme Court saying that. That's the Supreme Court. And it's a short case. I mean, now cases, you got books that you got to read, but that was just a single page. They put all that in a single page. And so when kids, that's one of the ones that the kids find most appealing. I mean, because it's like, whoa, because it's right there. They get to read it for themselves. And my kids get all that stuff, and they have the links to it, so they can click on it and link and go straight to it. So if they have a conversation with the parents or with anybody else, they can easily show them the information.
Fantastic.
Makes you want to go audit his class, doesn't it?
Well, it's funny you say that, because let me tell you this is because my superintendent told me, wherever I go, I need to tell people this. This is from my superintendent. One of the things that I've done all my life in the classroom is the first day of school is most important. And so the first day of school, I tell my kids, hey, I'm going to call your parents this weekend. Now, you should see their eyes. They're horrified because their parents are going to be called. I said, no, you don't understand. I am going to brag on you. And then they look at me kind of strange. And so here's what happens. The first day of week of school, you got like 1 or 2 days, not very many. And so the kids will have an A on their first assignment. Every one of them will have an A for this purpose. So I can call their parents and I will tell them, hi, I'm Dr. James Taylor. I currently have your son or daughter in XYZ class. And they currently have an A in my class. And I anticipate that they'll continue to do A work. Well, what that does, unfortunately, every single year, I teach sophomores, but every single year I hear parents tell me, you're the first teacher that's ever called and said something positive about my child. Now, there should have been at least 9 others that have said something, but that's sad. That's a tragedy. And so what that does is it builds a relationship with the parents. The parents and I start off on a good relationship. Then that gives me a good relationship with the kids because now somebody is saying something positive about them, whatnot. Well, when I first got to Little Axe, and I've been doing this for a long time, but when I first got to Little Axe, the 3 weeks after I got there, the superintendent comes into my classroom. Now, I've been in education, like I said, for 18 years, and I have never had a superintendent come into my classroom. So when this happened, I'm like, uh-oh, what happened? Because I don't know what happened. And he says these words to me. And he's the one who told me I should tell everyone where I go. He says, you have no idea how you have impacted our community. I am having parents call me saying, I want my younger son or my younger daughter to have Dr. Taylor as their teacher in school. So here's what happened. My entire schedule has been changed. I now get every single sophomore in the school.
Wow.
If they have to go see me before they can go on to the other 11th grade. And so and my superintendent is the one who told me I should tell people that. Well, now you think about this. What do you think would happen if 10% of the teachers in our state did something like that? That would be powerful. Now, what would it be if you could get 50% to do it out of their heart, not because they're mandated, because that ain't going to work, but out of their heart? You talk about an impact upon education. Now, here's what also happened as a result. When we have parent-teacher conference, I have a lot of parents who come into my classroom. There are many times when I have more parents come to my classroom than other teachers have. Well, why is that? Because I'm connecting with them, because I believe that it is parental empowerment that is the big deal. Parents make the decisions about what's going on in their children's life. God holds the parents responsible for that. So that comes from my superintendent, who tells me, you need to let people know that. And that's one of the things I would like to do, is to encourage people. You can't mandate it, because if you're forcing people to do something that they don't want to do, it's going to show. And it's not going to be something that's going to be out of the heart to make a difference. So.
Right. And I picked up on that when we had the school superintendent forum in February, that you really connect with your students. So let's talk about the crisis in the classroom. You noted that public confidence in education system has plummeted from 41% in 2004 down to 31% in 2025. You also point out that the low salaries compared to neighboring states are driving massive teacher shortages. How do we get highly qualified conservative teachers back into Oklahoma schools?
Well, question. I think there's several things. Yeah, excellent question. I think there's several things that come into play with that. One, teachers need to be able to teach. Okay. One of the things that's on my flyer is also the second thing on the things to do would be connecting with our legislators, so that our legislators pass laws that actually enhance education and not stifle it or interfere with it. Because they make some law. I think they make some laws that had nothing to do with people that are in the classroom, because I'm like, no teacher would want this. And so I think that there has to be a connection with them, so that they pass laws that actually enhance education and not deter from it. Then I also think that, the third thing in my file up there in that flyer talks about how since 2018, we've increased spending in education by 51%. And you would think that the numbers would go up, but that's not what they're doing. They're going down. So it's not about money. I'll be honest with you. I'm at Little Axe High School, and in the metro, that's probably one of the lowest paying school districts in the entire metro. And I am happier there than I've ever been in any school I've ever been at. And because it's not about money, and my kids are being impacted in there in a positive way. So it's not about the money. However, people are motivated by money. So, we need to have incentives for the teachers that are excellent in what they do. They need to be getting more money than the ones who are just doing it as a job. Because there's teachers that are it's just a job to them. They like the summer schedule, so they got 2.5, 3 months off, and the holidays. I mean, there are teachers like that. It's all about that. And instead of them being committed to the excellence in their classroom, The excellence in their classroom matters. It starts off, like I said earlier, on day one. If that's not happening, then you're going to have problems. If you don't take care of day one, you're going to have problems today in your classroom. And so I'm not sure that money is the answer. I mean, I'm not a big. I don't think that's really the way it has to go. I do know that there are going to be people who are motivated by that. So if we can get them to be motivated by that, I think if we can get the administrators to leave the teachers alone, so they're not over their shoulder the whole time trying to see what they're doing, because you're trusting these adults to be the teacher. So let them teach. Let them teach. And so they have to have that ability. They need to be supported, that whenever they're dealing with something in their classrooms, that they are supported by the administration and not unsupported. Because if they're not being supported, they're going to leave. You know, even at our school earlier this year, we had a teacher that left probably within 3 weeks of being in school. And and part of that has to do with support. He did not feel like he was being supported. But that's what happens. And so teachers will be leaving. So if you can get where there's support for the teachers, if you can get to where there's financial incentives for those who are doing it, and there are some of those things in place, but they're very limited. Only a certain number of people can get those things. My thinking is, if everyone in your school is doing it, then everyone in the school should get that. That's the way I think.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, but that's not how the system works. So I think those are some of the ways how we can get those things done.
Well, the reason we need a good state superintendent is because we need someone to think outside the box and ask these questions too. So, and still on funding questions. So since 2018, the per pupil public school revenue increased by over 51%, but academic outcomes have steadily declined. So if massive funding increases are not achieving academic excellence, what exactly needs to change to get Oklahoma out of the bottom of the national rankings? What are you planning to do?
It is a lot simpler than people think. One of the big issues is reading. Our kids can't read. My daughter, she goes to a Christian school. She's a second grader, and she reads at a fifth grade level. She probably is reading at a sixth grade level now, but she reads at least a fifth grade level. And because she's taught phonics. They don't teach phonics. Our kids can't even read cursive anymore because they don't teach cursive anymore. I mean, so things that are from the past, they can't even read. So we need to go back. I'm old school. I just want to tell you, I'm old school. I think we should go back to old school, use some of those old school methods, but use the technology that we have, because AI is here to stay, whether we like it or not, but it's here to stay, and utilize those things so that we can incorporate the right stuff so that the kids can grow and mature, but they have to read. You know, I was asked one time, what's the first thing I would do? And first thing I said is, I think we need to change. First thing I try to do is change the history standards back. But then it hit me, and I said, no, actually, if they can't read, then it doesn't matter about the history standards, because if they can't read, it won't matter. So it goes back to getting back to their ability to read. My daughter reads, and she goes anywhere she wants to read. She meaning she can travel anywhere she wants by a book, and she's constantly asking to buy books, constantly. And so we got a lot of books at our house, and she reads. So she's very much into phonics at her school, and she's learning how to read. And so we have to get back to that. I'm not even sure why we changed that. I mean, I really don't know what good reason they had to say, nah, we're going to get rid of this. But somebody made that.
Yeah, we've been on that slippery slope way too long.
Yeah. So we're going to try to get that back. And I do know that the other candidates are talking about some of that stuff as well, the phonics. But that's really a big deal. That's a huge deal. Huge deal.
Well, you've been very clear that legislators need to work alongside the Department of Education, educators, and parents. So you say the goal should be to create laws that enhancing learning rather than distracting from it. With all the recent shakeups and controversies at the State Department of Education, how do you plan to unite lawmakers to actually make meaningful reform?
Well, there are a handful of them, actually quite a few of them, that I personally know some of them. I knew before they even became in Congress, or not Congress, but the House and the Senate. Some of them I've helped even actually on their campaigns and campaign for them. So I have relationships with many of them. I don't know them all, and I think that that's what it has to do. I believe that just as I built relationships with the parents and the students and the administration in my school, I believe the same thing can happen with them. And there's some things they got to change. Uh, for example, we need to go back to where the legislator needs to decide back to where it used to be, where the legislators got 2 members on the board, the superintendent got 2 members on the board, and the executive branch got 2 members on the board. What they've done now is put that all under the executive branch. And we've seen just recently where
Mm-hmm.
people didn't vote the way the governor wanted them to, and so they were removed.
Right.
And so we saw that is not the way it ought to be done. And so I want to talk with those guys, say, let's go back the way it was, because that's a better way of doing things and a more equitable way of doing things. And so that's a decision that the legislators can make. And I'm hoping that they will make wise decisions like that. There's one thing that they made that they decided. They gave us what's called the ICAP. What the ICAP is, and it's a requirement. You have to take it freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year to graduate. What the ICAP is, that we don't even call it the ICAP. We call it the ICRAP, is what we call it, because it doesn't do what it's designed. What it was designed for was to try to figure out what kids might want to be when they get out of high school, what profession they may be. And so I understand what they were trying to do, but they made it mandatory. So here's what happens now. In reality, all the kids are doing is just marking A, B, 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 and then turn it in, and they're done in 5 minutes. They haven't read a question, don't have a clue, because they don't care about it. This is something that somebody in the legislative branch made a decision of. Now the teachers are required to do it. And so I want to visit with them to say, hey, why don't we just change that and rescind that to make it just voluntary? Because if you're voluntary to see, hey, what am I going to do, then that's going to be better. So you got to have a relationship that's healthy with them and trying to get what's best for the kids. It's not about just an idea that you have. It's about what is best for the kids. How is this going to impact the kids' life? Now, I think the idea initially might have been good because trying to find out what the kids wanted, but that's not how it's being executed. And I've been at conferences, teacher conferences, and I found out that, I thought we were pretty clever to call it the ICAP, but other schools are calling it the same thing because it's really a waste of time. It's really a waste of time for the kids. And so that's something that the teachers have to do that they don't need to be doing. That takes away from education.
Dr. Taylor closes out tonight. The Republican primary is coming up in June. What is your final pitch to the voters of Comanche County and the state of Oklahoma on why you are the absolute best choice for state superintendent?
Well, it's simply this. I am a lifelong constitutional, conservative, fiscally responsible Black Republican. Now, the reason why I say it like that is for 2 reasons. One, I have been asked, do I have the ability to stand alone? And I always say, well, I'm a Black, constitutionally conservative Republican. What do you think? Because there's not a whole lot of us that are there. And then the second reason why I say that is this. I am a lifelong Republican. I have never once ran as a Democrat. I've never once entertained the idea of being a Democrat. That just is foreign to me. And yet we have candidates that ran twice as a Democrat to try to win in this office. They lost. And then they challenged Ryan as a Republican last time and lost. And then we have another one who ran as a Democrat and lost. And then she ran as a Republican, and then she won. And I think there is one of the most frustrating things for me as a Republican is these people that get up there and they tell you what they're conservative and they're this and they're that. And when they get up there, they start voting like they have no sense. And they're voting opposite of what they told me are told the group that they were going to be voting. And I point to Joy Hoffmeister. Joy Hoffmeister was the superintendent. And when she was the superintendent, I voted for her, full disclosure, I voted for her both times. But in her second term, I said to my wife, I said, honey, something's not right. I think Joy is a Democrat. And she says, why do you say that? I said, I can't pinpoint it, but I can tell you my spirit is telling me that something's not right. And as a Christian, I rely upon the Lord to give me directions on things. And guess what happened? Lo and behold, midway through her second term, Joy switches parties. So here's my point about that. At what point do we as Republicans say to ourselves, enough's enough? Einstein was right. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. When will we say we got to stop this? Let's put people who say what they're going to be and have demonstrated over the years, what they be. I mean, my book is really sermons that I preach. When I talk about education in here, this book was published in 2016. So this is not something that I'm just saying because I want to run. This is something that I believe. This is something that I live off of. And so, this literally is, you want to know who I am? This is who I am. And it's just simply the nature of my, you can tell where I'm going to go based upon what you know out of here. And that's really how it's going to be. And so education, let me just say this in closing. I believe that it's not the government's responsibility. It's not the state's responsibility to educate our kids. It's not the school's responsibility to educate our kids. It's not even the church's responsibility to educate our kids. It is the parent's responsibility to educate our kids. In fact, not so much, even more so, God holds the parent, the father, responsible. When Adam and Eve sinned, it was Eve who sinned first. What did God do? God says, Adam, where are you? Why? Because God Adam over Eve she was responsible to him. He was responsible for her, and he blew it in his education process. It started from the very beginning that the fathers, this is a problem for us, men have abdicated their responsibility in their homes for the educational process of the kids. It is the father and mother's responsibility to determine if their kid's going to be educated in public school, in private school, in Christian school, or homeschool. That's their choice. And so
to take that power back. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, that's what it is. To empower the parents. Yeah. The parents should be able to go in and see what's going on in education with their curriculum, no matter what time of day it is. They should be able to see what's going on.
Absolutely. Hey, I got one more question. Hang on a second, Sharla. One question came up on the screen that I think is very important. I'm going to put it up there, and I'm going to read it to you. I don't know if you can see it, Dr. Taylor, but it's from Chuck Maxwell. He's here in Norman, and he says, I have a senior at home that goes to Norman North that cannot write cursive, but my 10-year-old grandson that lives in Pekowski, put it back up there, I can't pronounce it, Oklahoma, has been taught cursive in elementary school, writes cursive excellent, and can read it. And he says, is it the difference in school size?
No, it's a difference in what the school decides they're going to do. It's not the size of the school that makes a difference in it. It's what they decide they're going to do. And so a large school can teach phonics. It's not, all schools used to teach phonics. So it's not like it's some foreign language. So that's what that is. All schools. It's not the size of the schools. It's the determination of that school administration.
Good answer. All right, Sharla, back to you.
Well, Dr. Taylor, thank you so much for taking time out tonight. And thank you for following God's calling into this journey. And we appreciate you taking time out away from your family to spend time with us. And we just, God bless you and good luck.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I just want to say, go to taylorforok.org, and there you can, and the number 4, taylorforok.org, there you can get all the things you need, my flyers, etc., signs, volunteer, all those things are there. And if you have extra money that you want to depart with, you can serve.
Well, to our listeners, go to his website, If you want to learn more about Dr. James Taylor's campaign, head over to Taylor4.com. Got to get up the sidelines. You got to get involved.
And the Comanche County Republican Party meets every third Tuesday of the month. We need you in the fight. This month, we are meeting April the 19th at 11:30 a.m. at the Lawton Country Club. Our guest speakers is going to be Jake Merrick for governor, T.W. Shannon for lieutenant governor, Cindy Bird for lieutenant governor, and Dr. John Cox. Your RSVP is required. Go to our website at ComancheGOP.org to RSVP.
Stay vigilant, guys. Stay involved. Good night, Comanche County. Good night, Oklahoma.
Good night, Dr. Taylor. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.